Now, as chair, I get to also kick things off. So I thought, well, we're talking about fraud and we're talking about the insider threat. Let's make you feel a little bit uncomfortable as well, shall we? So I'm going to give you a little bit of an excerpt from a presentation I did at the UK IT Leaders Conference at the tail end of last year. So this was aimed at CIOs, CTOs, that kind of thing. And the conference organizer said, could you make them feel a little bit uncomfortable? And I'm like, yes, because that's what I love doing. Thank you very much. So in essence, part of this was really then thinking about culture, really getting people thinking about how many times do you refer to users as the weakest link. I'm just going to put it out there. This is one of my pet hates. It's very easy to say, well, it's the stupid user's fault because they clicked the link and they didn't follow the process and they didn't do this and they didn't do that. But it's actually us that sets the process. It's us that kind of creates all of these things. And the other thing that we like to call people is the repeat offenders. Now I can tell you quite confidently there's quite a number of companies that I work with where they basically have a strike list. So with it's 3 strikes, 5 strikes, and you're out. And that's because you're clicking the link again. Now you can imagine the fear that's in those people. Is it an email? Is it not an email? Do I click? Don't I click? And if I do make a mistake, what am I going to do? I'm certainly not going to tell you, am I? Because I'm fearful that I'm going to get sacked. So what do? I put it under the carpet with everything else and hope nobody notices. So what I kind of led with is this kind of really awkward kind of moment. And I think insider risk is a little bit of a taboo subject anyway for a lot of companies. They'd much rather talk about the external threat, all the horrible threat actors outside. Let's just ignore all the people in our own organization. And let's be fair, most of them are just trying to do their job. They're trying to do the right thing. But we do have those sort of people that don't understand process, and maybe they do make mistakes, and maybe they're not thinking, they're stressed out. So we kind of, what if it's not them? What if you're the problem? And that's kind of where I'm going to be really talking about, just to get us into the mood for the day, particularly as we're talking about fraud and the insider threat. So we use this whole thing of shadow IT, aren't we? We give people these sanctioned applications and services, and these are the things that we give you to use in your organization, and lots of people then turn around and go, nah, that's not good enough for me. I'm going to start downloading stuff off the internet because I know best and I want to use different applications. So we've seen this already with ChatGPT and DeepSeek and everything else, and there's this rush to start banning applications and banning services. But the problem is that people just want it more. So what is shadow IT? We have this thing called shadow processes as well. And this is really, in essence, over time, you have these nice processes that you've created. You've built all these applications. You probably have all these flow charts. And when new people come into the organization, you give them this manual, go and read the manual, learn the manual, and do everything as I say. Problem is, that's not how things work in the real world. People actually make their own processes, they make their own shortcuts, and they do their own ways of doing things. And slowly but surely that becomes normal. This becomes normal processes. And in essence, we've got to think about, if someone in your organization can figure out a workaround and can figure out how to bypass all of your processes, how to download stuff off the internet without being blocked or without being questioned, then why not an attacker? Because their job, in essence, is to find the path of least resistance. And so, in essence, if you don't know the process and you don't know what applications you have, how can you secure it? So that's a kind of a number one thing to think about. The other thing that you've got to think about in your own organization is the tipping point. What turns a really, really good employee into somebody who just doesn't care anymore? And this is apathy. And this is really, really dangerous into your organization, because when you have people that don't care, they stop thinking about you, they stop thinking about the organization. They couldn't care less if you have a phishing link. Couldn't care less if a threat actor is asking me to do something. Not my problem, is it? How does that start? Normally, you have these very good people, and they work those long hours, they do everything you're asking for, and they're hoping one of you out there is looking at them, and on one of these days, I'm going to get promoted, I'm going to get pay rise. And then nothing happens, and I do this over and over again to the point where I just stop caring. And that's what he said, this is really dangerous. We have this rise of the super malicious user. We heard about malicious users. These are the people who know what they're doing and they're trying to bypass the processes and everything else. Now, these people absolutely understand every loophole, every process, what you're looking for and certainly what you're not looking for. And when I kind of said, this is probably people who work in IT, probably work in security, and that's when I see all the people like, no, not me. Probably even people who work in your fraud department. Now, the interesting thing, 30% all insiders are super malicious insiders. Just let that sink in a little bit with regards to who we're talking about, why we're talking about it, and why this is really dangerous. When we just assume that people are going to follow process, they're doing the right thing, and they're going to do what's needed. And the problem we have is just there's a few stats here that kind of just illustrate the problem that we're talking about. So this is happening, this is rife, this is happening everywhere. I want to kind of just draw your attention to the top one, Amazon. Now this was interesting because this was a woman who's an operations manager, works in logistics as part of the Amazon online shopping as opposed to the cloud. And as she worked out, if I need to do this fraud, I actually need to recruit some people in the organization to do the fraud with me. And so she actually figured out, when you think about Amazon Marketplace, you have multiple different vendors, multiple different people selling their services. So she figured out if I could set up some fake suppliers, like fake invoices, I need someone to approve the invoices and then pay the invoices. So she had about 3 or 4 people inside the organization committing this fraud, committing this empire on her behalf. Now she is in prison, to be fair. But this is the kind of when you've got to think about just who these people are. Payroll administrator, IT manager. We have our software developer as well at Tesla. Now I'm kind of hesitant to guess we're going to see a lot more insider threat from Tesla, just saying. But what does this mean? Another thing that we like to do when something goes wrong is we like to find a scapegoat. Who shall we blame today? Who shall we sack? Who should we throw in front of the media? Now, the interesting thing about the scapegoat, this goes back to biblical times. In essence, the goat was made to wear all the sins of all the people and then kicked out into the wilderness. So in the modern era, the scapegoat is somebody who really can't defend themselves very well. Probably not going to be a member of the leadership team, probably not going to be someone who's elite because they've got money to defend themselves. So what makes a really, really good scapegoat is someone who cannot stand up for themselves. And this means that we can place all of those things to them. Now, the problem with the scapegoat is that actually we're taking all the emphasis away from the attacker, moving it onto the victim, and kind of ignoring everything that kind of went before it. And the problem with that, ultimately, is nothing's changed. Yes, we gave someone a disciplinary, we sacked them, we might even have prosecuted them. But actually, the thing that caused the incident in the first place never changed. And the thing that we love about a scapegoat is everybody loves an underdog. And who likes an underdog more than a whistleblower? So when we're talking about people in your organization and what they're doing and what they're looking at, there are people in your organization. I said, not only do they understand your processes, not only do they understand your culture, not only do they watch the fact that you're scapegoating all of these people and not changing anything, but they get really, really annoyed about it and they take things into their own hands. And so part of that, therefore, is what am I going to kind of do with the aggrieved insider who has nothing to lose and everything to gain? And so these are the people that said, I'm not going to keep this in the organization anymore. I'm going to go public. So all those things that you hoped were going to stay under the carpet was never going to come to fruition. Now it's all out in the open. So what does that mean? What does that mean when we kind of think about how we think about culture again in our organization? When something goes wrong, what do? Do you lead with fear, or do you lead with some empathy? And so this makes a huge difference to that insider threat and how people are feeling, how cognizant they are. Do they have this kind of realm of psychological safety? And this is really the business case for the human-centric security, which is really about putting the people first always. And that just means that people are always top of mind. We're always understanding the impact, irrespective of the incident, irrespective of what's going on. So these are the most vulnerable elements of our company. These are the people who can be exploited. They can be exploited from within our company, and they can also be exploited from outside our company at the same time. So part of this is doing the good diligence. So what are you reporting upwards? Are we being honest? Are we being transparent? Are we telling the truth, in essence? And when something goes wrong, when we have a major incident, what are you going to do about it? Are you willing to lift the carpet and see what's there? Are you willing to do what's needed to make a change? Or are you just going to follow the scapegoat? You're going to follow the culture? This is the way it's always been. Let's just rack it up to another incident that's happened. And that's what I sort of said. However much you try and hide things, it will get out, and it will get out at some point. And it's going to get out exactly when you don't want it to. So what does that mean? We have to be transparent. We have to be really honest and believable. Now, what's the difference between believable and honesty? Well, I can sit here and tell you what you want to hear, probably a bit of bullshit. But honesty is actually telling the truth. Not just kind of let me think about all the things that you want to do that's going to get me off the hook when I tell you all of these things. And that's about building credibility, and it's about having this kind of principle of well-being at the same point. And it's really about, rather than looking at all the things that the people did wrong and going over the bones like vultures, it's really thinking, what did the attacker do right? What do we learn? What do we kind of do from these things? So really is these opportunities that we have is understanding the attacker's mindset, whether that's external, internal, understanding the vulnerabilities, understanding the gaps, how can they be exploited, really understanding culture. Is it working for you, or is it working against you? And having this kind of education is really about not just understanding the threats, but really understanding what does that mean when it comes to building resilience. We talk a lot about operational resilience. Are we really focused also on emotional resilience and how we're actually helping our people? Are we hindering our people? Kind of the biggest thing is that empowerment to say no. So if you lead with a heavy hand, when I tell you to do something, you do it now. You don't question me because this is the way it's always been. So when an attacker comes along and said, you do it now, you don't question me, do as I say. That's the problem. So that's the empowerment to say, no, I'm not going to do it. I need to check. I need to verify. I have this level of psychological safety that enables me to do it.